Made locally in Bath. This is Radio Bath.
So welcome along, it's Richard Beauvoisin here until 12 o'clock today. And on a story to tell, I have Paul Lang. So from a Devonport dockyard to a Navy frigate ship to the BBC to over 100 productions worldwide and even knowing King Charles a little bit. Let's not forget being a delivery driver during lockdown too. Let's just say Paul has lived a very varied life and we're very lucky to have a chat with him today. So good morning, Paul, and how are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. I'm good. Yeah, that's quite an introduction. I didn't think I'd get any of those titles.
But you never know, do you? I'm intrigued at where you are as well. So what are all the pictures that you've got around you?
Yeah, I'm in, well, it's more of a dog kennel, but it's also my office. You may well hear the dog a bit later. Pictures of family, Laurel and Hardy, just stuff, memorabilia, really.
Just stuff.
My girlfriend calls it ethnic tat, which I'm not allowed to. She wants me to throw most of it out that I've gathered from various places in the world.
Oh, it looks amazing. So is there anything that I missed out on the intro then that you have done?
Not really. Only my current job. I'm currently a community police officer.
Oh yeah. So how did you become a community police officer? We're going to work backwards here a little bit.
Yeah, going to work backwards. That led on, or it came forward from Tesco because
Right.
during the pandemic, filming completely finished, and the rug got pulled under my feet, and I couldn't sit at home. So I did a short spell working at Middlesex Hospital as a porter, and then I joined Tesco's as a delivery driver. But I loved the community side of it, and I felt I was giving something back. And I sort of reached the end of the road with film, and it was sort of drying up a little bit. It's all done a different way now. So I just thought, well, why not become a community police officer? And I absolutely love it.
I was going to say, how do you find it? It's very different than what you've done before.
Yeah, it is. It is challenging, but having done documentaries for a large majority of my life, the skill I had was to talk to people, and I find that skill's sort of been lost. People are so buried in their phones and they won't talk to each other. That just having that face to face with people is something people don't get very often, especially from a police officer, because most of our guys are on response. So it's very rare they see
Yeah.
someone plodding around the street, which is what I do, and I love it. And I'm fit as a butcher's dog now. I tell you, with all the steps I'm doing.
I was going to say, how many steps do you do on average a day then? Do you have a counter or anything?
I do. I expect 20,000 if I'm on foot patrol, and if I'm on the bike, I cycle about 20 miles.
Blimey, that is going some. And whereabouts do you do that?
All over London. I'm
Right.
literally. I can patrol. We're based in one place, but we can patrol all over London. So it's quite a free reign, and it's good. I enjoy it.
Okay, so you're currently a community police officer. We're going to chat about the delivery driving a little bit later. And then before that, I never know what quite the right title is. So for Mary, who I interviewed recently, who I know you know as well, she's a focus puller. And I had to kind of find out what that meant.
Yeah.
And when I was looking on IMDb for yourself, you look like you had about 20 different jobs.
Yeah, it's all those things you saw as a kid going up at the end of the screen. You think, what on earth do they do? I ended up doing quite a few of them. So I'm primarily an electrician. So I was an electrician in the shipyard. Then I joined the BBC. So I joined the BBC as an electrician. But on a film set, electricians are called best boys, gaffers, and that was what they are. And then I moved on to the camera department, became clapper loader, focus puller, camera operator. But I specialize in documentaries. So yes, I became an assistant cameraman on documentaries, and then became another title, DOP, director photographer on documentaries.
Right.
And in those days, it was all on film, 10-minute magazines.
Yeah, I was reading that. Explain more about that. I didn't really understand it particularly, if I'm honest.
Well, all the old pictures you see of a camera with the old reel on the top.
Yeah.
On documentaries is primarily 16 mil. It would last 10 minutes. So that focuses the mind on what you're going to shoot. Whereas, now you can stick a card in a camera, it can last up to 2 hours. So you just tend to shoot everything. Whereas the director would really have to focus on what they wanted. And also it was expensive. And, you could go away to, the Far East for 3 weeks and not know what you'd shot because you weren't going to get it developed until you got home. So it's sort of concentrated made you get it right. That's for sure.
So do you feel now that the standards are not necessarily what they used to be?
I think the standards are good. I mean, there's fantastic films and documentaries being made, but I think it's so accessible now, and I think people have accepted, without sort of putting people down, people have accepted lower standards. The good is still good, but I think there's so much material now. You know, you can wave your phone around and you can get it shown on TV. It doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be up the right way. They just put blurred edges left and right.
Yeah.
But you know, it's completely changed. The media's changed, so you know, and I changed with it. And you know, I decided to step out when I did. I just sort of, and also the crews were getting smaller, especially on documentaries. You go away with a sound man, an assistant cameraman, and a researcher, and now you know people are sometimes going out on their own, doing everything.
Right.
Which you know, there's no fun in that really.
So when you were making documentaries, and say we'll talk about some more in detail later, was it the scenario that you were simply behind the camera, or were you doing much of the production behind it, or choosing what was being shot? How did that work?
No, you would. I only tended to work with people I knew, directors I knew, which was great. So you sort of you can anticipate what they want. But a good director. Always remember I worked with Alan Parker once, and he said that the best director just works with people who know what they're doing and let them get on with it. So they don't micromanage. And I tended to work with directors who didn't do that, who were great, just trusted me to do what I did. And you get a sixth sense of what they want. So you finish the sequence, and then you say, well, what did we get? Have we got enough? And if you needed to do a bit more, you do a bit more. But
And
it's quite organic.
yeah. So I know it's kind of almost a very difficult question to say. It's a bit like choosing your favorite child, but did you have a favorite director to work with, and why?
Well, it's I'm going to have to say my partner Lou. I met her on a film, and I've done lots of films with her. We've sort of roughed it in India and been all over the world. So, and it's that sixth sense that a lot of directors need a monitor to look at to see what's he doing, what's he doing. But you work with some directors who know what you're doing without looking at a monitor, and they just look at the action. And my partner does that, and I've worked with a few other directors who do that as well. They just trust you to get on with it, and they concentrate on what they're actually seeing. They're not looking at a monitor, so they're not detached from it,
Right.
which is the old-fashioned way of doing it. I mean, we never had monitors. Directors just used to look at the scene and the actors,
Yeah.
and then look across at the cameraman and say, "Was that any good?" And you just go, "Yes or no."
And they would then trust what you are saying.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that must be quite difficult, because I know for myself, so I'm a dance teacher normally, and I run a lot of the business by myself. My wife comes in, and she's also a dance teacher, and then we have what I like to discuss, professional discussions about how things are happening. Do you have many of those?
Yeah, I do have professional discussions. It's funny because I'm not the most technical, not the most technical cameraman there was. I find out what buttons I need to press. I don't need to know what all the buttons do, because I'm old fashioned. I'm just get the exposure right, get the focus right, make a nice frame. I mean, I always said that it doesn't matter what you're shooting on. It all has to fit into that rectangle. It's either nice or it's not nice. And you could have the best camera in the world with the most expensive lenses in the world, but if you haven't framed it rightly, it's still going to look awful. So you would always have discussions about how to frame things. And it's important not to dig your heels in, because you think, oh, I know how to do this. And then someone can say something and you think, all right, I'll give it a go. Then you look at it and think, God, it's amazing. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
You just have to keep an open mind. Same with everything I do. But, you know, I think those discussions need to be had. And I did enjoy it. I enjoyed having sort of happy mistakes, as it were. And you think, well, why don't we put him over there? Why doesn't he look out the other side of frame? And it worked. So
I was looking on your website, and obviously you've done a lot of the film stuff on there as well, but there's other things that you do as well. So it put on there about you're kind of like almost a little bit of a Forrest Gump type of character. So you enjoy your running too.
I do enjoy my running. I love it. I discovered it in sort of 2016, I guess. I used to take the mick out of runners, and they go past me and go, oh, what are they doing? And I got bitten by the bug. I'm not very fast, but I just love it. It's great for your headspace. You never feel worse when you get back. I never thought I'd run a marathon. I've run 2, and I just loved it. I think the first time I ran the London Marathon, it was almost euphoric. It's you just find yourself welling up all the time. You think, I can't believe I'm doing this. Because as a kid, you see them going over Tower Bridge, and you see all the people running for charity. And I thought, my God, I'm here. I've done it. And I just wish all that public spirit that was bottled up at that time was kept, because it was amazing. I was on a high for ages. I just the whole spirit of everyone, all there for a good cause, and I just thought it was amazing.
And I know one of the major difficulties when you have a big event like that is that you do all the training for months beforehand. You then have the event, and I've had this when I've done dance competitions in the past, and then you have the whole of what do I do now? How did you get past that?
Yeah, you do. You like you said with your dancing, you do have that what now moment, but you just keep running again, and you recover for a couple of weeks, and you go out and do another 5K or 10K, and you think, yeah, I remember why I like doing this, and then you just sort of look towards the next event. But it's just something. You get up in the morning, and you know what it's like. Sometimes you struggle with think, oh my God, am I going to put my trainers on and go out? As soon as you're out there running, you think, yeah, this is why. And it doesn't have to be very far, it doesn't have to be very fast, but you always come back feeling much better. And a part of that experience from doing the marathon always comes back. And it's you know it's, and you see people running sometimes with the t-shirt on at the marathon you ran, and you sort of give yourselves a thumbs up.
And was there a charity you ran for as well?
I ran for Amnesty the first time. I ran for Young Minds the second time. And I'm running currently for it's called the Dylan Strong Foundation, which is a young lad who passed away, and his parents started a charity to encourage hospitals to encourage kids to eat well, just to use nutrition as part of their well-being. So I might be running the Ealing Half Marathon dressed as a large broccoli in September.
Okay, so that lends me to why a large broccoli?
Well, because it's one of the characters. My partner directs Bobby Broccoli. Then they're trying to encourage kids to eat healthily, and I think they've got a big foam costume of a broccoli. So I'm going to try and purloin that and run around the streets of Ealing with that. The trouble is, I'm going to have to practice running in that. So it's going to be.
I often say in the dance world that, you know, if people are using their arms and being expressive with their arms in a dance hall, that is normal. If you did that walking down the street, that would be classed as slightly unusual. Running the London Marathon or surrounded by people doing, you know, everybody in costumes, that's normal. As you say, running around Ealing in a broccoli suit by yourself might get the odd look.
Yeah. Thing is, I'm going to have to practice running in it, because the first day I run can't be the day, because you know. But yeah, so I might be running around the towpath around the River Thames dressed as a broccoli.
So if you do, so what do you want people to say to you if anybody sees you running as a broccoli? Is there anything they can say?
I don't even like broccoli, so I don't. I don't know. I just yeah. Don't be frightened. I'm running for charity. It's not a giant broccoli monster running down the road. It's good. It's running is like a little escape, and it's good for your headspace. It always clears you up.
That is amazing. And last thing I'm going to say in this little section here is we mentioned your dog earlier. So I believe you just qualified as a therapy dog. What is that?
Yeah, it's probably the only exam she's ever going to pass in her life. It's a sort of scruffy cavapoo thing, and I take her down the care home near us, and I was worried she was going to be too barky or jumpy. She's full of energy, but the nurse down there said that they don't want a dog that just sits on the bed and goes to sleep. They want something that's active and stimulates people.
Yeah.
So Therapy Dogs Nationwide, who examined her, I had to take her down for an examination and a test, and they pulled her ears and pulled her tail and dropped a sandwich on the floor and see if she sort of go frantic. I think it's the best behaved she's ever been for an hour. She passed, and now she's going down to the care home whenever I can fit it in, which is great. I get just that as much out of it as the dog.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
No, I know there's a number of local places in Trowbridge, which is where I'm based. There's a number of volunteers that go in and help at the care homes, and I've heard a number of people saying how much they get out themselves of going
Yeah.
in and playing games with people.
Yeah, yeah. And lockdown, I know it was hard for everyone, but I wasn't even allowed to take the dog and show her through the window. I mean, it was just heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
But since then, and been taking her back, it's just been fantastic.
That sounds
and
fantastic.
They all know her, and her pictures are on the wall, and they got pictures of her in their rooms and stuff. So it's
And what's her name?
Millie.
Millie the dog.
Yeah, Millie the dog.
Oh, sounds amazing. Well, we're going to have a little break for music. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of your specific projects you did whilst you were a cameraman or cinematographer. I think I got that right. So we'll be back right after this.
Radio Bath.
So we're back. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. So on A Story to Tell, we have Paul Lang here, and we're going to talk about some of the projects that Paul has been involved with over the years while he was behind the lens. So the first one we're going to talk about is, I believe you went to Haiti and did a project out there. How was that, Paul?
Yeah, I did. One of those weird things, you get a phone call and the next thing you find yourself stood in Port-au-Prince amongst rubble with a correspondent from Washington called Sebastian Walker. And we were doing a retrospective. It was about 8 months after the earthquake, but the place was still utterly destroyed.
And when was this earthquake? I'm trying to remember. It's a while ago now.
Oh God, racking my brains. You'll probably have to correct me, but I think it was 2003.
Okay.
I think.
And this was the big earthquake. This was the big earthquake, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think up to 350,000 people got killed, which is mind-numbing, really. But just the rubble and just seeing, I'd been there before in a previous documentary about AIDS, and I'd seen Port-au-Prince, and I saw it as it looked like the whole city was just barely staying up. And then imagining that earthquake hitting the magnitude it did, and just seeing the devastation. I mean, we were stood in sort of the belly of the cathedral, and the whole thing had gone down, and just sort of thousands of people underneath the rubble. But our story was sort of retrospective about the lack of aid that came down, how long it took to get there. The UN weren't covering themselves in glory. There was a cholera outbreak when we were there. Just seeing the desperation, but at the same time seeing the amazing things as all these sort of disasters bring out the best in people as well. And that's what we were trying to sort of focus on.
And one of the things I suppose that's quite difficult is you're surrounded by all that devastation. Where were you staying? Presumably it wasn't a tent.
No, we weren't staying in a tent because it was a little bit after the earthquake. They'd actually got some sort of infrastructure going. So we were staying further out of Port-au-Prince, where some buildings were still standing, and higher up. So we did have a floor to sleep on and electricity, but it was still dysfunctional as a city. But yeah, we were lucky enough not to be sleeping in tents, and most people were just still sleeping under the stars.
Yeah, that sounds a challenging time.
Yeah, no, it was, and you sort of been to quite a few disaster zones, Banda Aceh in Indonesia and places like that, and you do come back, and it is a real leveler, and you do have to sort of catch yourself when you start looking at the gas bill and going, "Oh bloody hell, it's the end of the world." It's not. Where you've just been is the end of the world, not looking at a gas bill. And you do have to pull yourself back and remind yourself what it was like when you were there, and hopefully you just sort of keep hold of some of that.
It is all about perspective, isn't it, on that regards?
Yeah. And it's not saying you shouldn't be concerned. It doesn't make you any worse a person, but you do think, God, I was there last week, I saw this. And with air travel, the next minute you're home and you're opening mail, my God, I was stood on a mass grave 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And you do have to catch yourself.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I was chatting to somebody the other day about people feeling bad about certain things. And there's that classic thing that somebody says is, at least you're not this person, at least you're not in the rubble or whatever. So therefore you don't feel entitled, you shouldn't feel entitled to feel bad about the gas bill. However, that principle doesn't quite work, because otherwise there's just one person out of the 8 billion people on this earth that are entitled to feel bad about things.
Yeah,
It doesn't
absolutely.
quite work like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, we've all got our concerns, and they're just as valid as everything else. So I think, it's like you said, it's circumstances, it's where you are. No, I totally agree with you on that.
Now, another project you worked on was Call of the Maestro. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I never thought I'd spend a year engrossed in Indian classical music, which is, being a lover of Bruce Springsteen and Johnny Cash. I thought, well, what's going to happen here? Well, we got commissioned to make a film in India over a year following maestros and how they train their disciples. And of course, Indian classical music isn't written down; it's all passed down just through teaching. And about how it was dying out, because with technology, kids don't want to spend 5 years at the feet of a maestro learning how to play the Rudravina or the sitar or the tabla. But that's what we went to film, and it was incredible. We filmed these old maestros living in penury in some next door to a rubbish dump in Mumbai, who was this master tabla player who had all these disciples around him. It was incredible. We filmed someone who played pots. I wish I could remember the name of the pots. He would play pots, and we were busy streets outside and all the horns and everything going, but real musicians. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. We spent a year tracking all these people down and basically recording them because they'd never been recorded. And it did well at film festivals and stuff, but it was one of those things you could just dive into. There was no agenda. It was going to go to cinema, so we didn't have to worry about selling toothpaste in commercial breaks or anything like that. It was just about the art, and something you wouldn't see on TV. And something I never thought I would get interested in, but it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
Do you still listen to Indian classical music now then, or is it always Bruce Springsteen?
It's mostly Bruce Springsteen, but no, I don't. But I appreciate it, and if it's funny because if I hear a bit, I go, "Oh, I know who that is," and that's one of those weird things about being a documentary filmmaker. You just go, "Oh, why do I know that? Oh yeah, I filmed that." But I do appreciate it now, and it's just you just find yourself in these situations that you would be to get from A to B is just as memorable as what was in A and what was in B. I mean, you're packed in a train with people passing grandmothers in a window, and your camera boxes are all on the roof and all sorts of stuff. And you think, God, how does it work? But it does. And you get there and you set up and you film this fantastic woman playing, a tabla or something. I mean, it was India's incredible. I don't know if you've been there or not. It's
I haven't. No, I keep meaning to go.
Oh, it's just for everything you can say the exact opposite, and it's still true. It's complete madness and infuriating. You just turn your head, and there's something so amazing while you're stood in the same spot. Think, God, what a place this is.
The closest I've been is Sri Lanka, many years ago, going through Colombo, and a similar experience I had there. So we were on the bus going to the hotel, and crossing the road was a crocodile, which of course happens every day. Nobody blinked an eye. Just this crocodile walked across in front of us all, and it was incredibly poor. This was at the time of the Tamil Tigers, and the following day when we visited something, it got blown up. So it was very high security all round. But one of the major things that sticks in my head from that is looking at the train and seeing the children going to school, and they were all immaculate.
Yeah.
Absolutely immaculate. And you think, the pride that they took in making sure they were pristine, even in the slums that they were living in, I thought was just incredible.
Yeah, we it's interesting you said that, because while we were in India, the amazing lady who had financed the film asked us if we'd make a charity film while we were there. So we made a film for a charity called Pratham, which encourages homeless street kids in India to learn how to read. And it's exactly that. They all they lived on a rubbish tip, but they all went to school in their school uniform.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And we just filmed at their schools when they had street schools. They set up just by the side of the road underneath the motorway with a blackboard, and they teach them how to read.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
No, it is phenomenal. And again, you look at some people that are in first world countries, and I say worrying about the gas bill, and then you kind of go to the other extreme. But still, what we have as our problems are actually real problems still.
Yeah,
And I don't think
yeah,
we should ever go away from that fact. But
no,
there we go.
absolutely not.
Another one. This is all quite heavy topics, these. But Burma, civil war. How was
Yeah,
that?
that was when I was at the BBC when I first started, and I was asked if I wanted to go to Burma as it was then. I think it was still called Burma. It wasn't called Miramar, but it was a history series for Time Watch, not to be connected or confused with Time Team, but it was a World War II film about how the Karen Indians helped us fight the Japanese in the Second World War, and the British government had said to them at the time, "You help us fight the Japanese, we'll get you your independence." When the war finished, cheerio, thanks very much, and left them there. And they were still fighting in 1994, no, 1997 when I went. So ours was taking on the story that they're still there. And some of the veterans who fought in the Second World War had become the village elders. So we were in the jungle fighting. Well, we weren't fighting, we were filming them fighting the Burmese government. And it was incredible. It's just one of those things. You just sort of you're there in the middle of the jungle with all this stuff flying around, and you just pinch yourself and you think, well, what? How did this happen? I mean, it was just crazy things that you think, God, I'm an electrician from a dockyard in Devonport, and now so many years later, I'm being shot at by Burmese forces in a jungle. And it's weird. And the next day you come back and you go on another film and you're filming horrible histories with Ratus, and it's just one of those weird things.
Do you ever have those moments? I talked to my big three children who are all teenagers, and I call it the smell the roses moment, where you just kind of lay back on a field and look up and just smell the roses and take it in effectively. Have you had many of those moments in your times?
Yeah, no, definitely. I've never looked at the next job. The job I've enjoyed is always the one I've been on. I'm not one of those people who's always on the phone while they're away trying to line up the next job. I always treated the job I was on as the most amazing thing I was ever going to do, and it's the last one I'm going to do. I never took it for granted. And I always felt, I guess I had imposter syndrome for a while. I think, what am I doing here? So I always treated it, and I always put my arms around that film and just thought, God, I'm so lucky to be here. Whether I'm sort of filming a telescope at the top of Mauna Kea on Hawaii or whatever, or I could be filming something up in Teesside or wherever. I was in the moment all the time. It didn't matter where I was. It's what I was doing and who I was with. I think those are the memories I take from me. It's the people I'm with and the experiences I had. I mean, I've got friends who work on feature films with all these amazing actors and stuff, and I don't think they're as fulfilled as you are. Filming, some of the documentaries I did with no money, sleeping two to a room. But I always threw myself at what I was doing and treated it as my last film.
It sounds amazing. I know when I spoke to Mary, she was never sure about what was going to happen next. And it sounds like it is that industry, whatever happens. Well, we're going to chat about a few more projects when we come back after the break, including documentary you made with King Charles as well, or Prince Charles as he was back then. So we'll be back after this.
This is Radio Bath.
Right, we're back with Paul Lang. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. A story to tell is what we've got, of course, here on Radio Bath. And we're going to talk about a few other projects for you now, Paul. Okay, so first one we're going to chat about is Life on the Limit. Tell us what that was all about.
Yeah, a Formula One film about how safety changed during the 70s and 80s for the Americans. Which is always a slightly different experience than working for the Brits.
In what way?
We've got a phrase, I'm not sure you've heard it. They tend to dig all day in a flower pot. They can make something really, really easy, really, really difficult very quickly. And they love surrounding themselves in kit and boxes and stuff. And if there's a harder way to do it, they do tend to do it. That's my experience on documentaries. So it was interesting. We fly all the way to Monaco or Abu Dhabi, and normally with a British production, you'd be sort of micromanaged, and there'd be lots of stuff to do. Whereas you go there, and it would just be so, well, this guy might turn up, he might not. Maybe we'll do him in Bahrain next month. Well, I'm not used to working like that, and it's so many fingers and so many pies, and it's so many chiefs. So One Life on the Limit was a bit like that. I did interview some very interesting people, and I loved it. I'm not really into Formula One, but I found the history of it very interesting. Interviewing the people I remember: Emerson Fittipaldi, Jody Scheckter, Jackie Stewart, people I remember sitting down with my dad and watching race around a racing track. And that I found really interesting. But the sort of the politics of working on an American film is completely different to a British film.
I'm trying to work out, because I've seen that type of thing. I think I watched the Ayrton Senna one, and also the rivalry between back in the 70s. There was a few drivers had different rivalries, and again, the safety aspect of it was so different back then, and so many more drivers were dying.
Yeah, that's right. And there was I'm gonna get his name. I think it was Sid Watkins, who was a doctor, who changed safety completely, because they didn't have any barriers on them. They were driving around circuit in Germany with trees on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And at that time they didn't have I think they're called monocoque, with all the proper safety on the where the driver sits. There was none of that. They were basically driving around in bombs. The fuel was all around them, and they were living the playboy lifestyle. There's a fantastic story of James Hunt. They had to find him before the race, sober him up, stick him in the car. But it's also corporate now. But there's nothing better doing a documentary than sat down with somebody who's absolutely fascinating, whether it's a war veteran, a racing driver, or somebody who normally starts things off by saying, well, I've got nothing to say, and then you just sit spellbound by them. And that's why I loved working on history programs, because the war veterans and the people who'd experienced stuff, I just felt a privilege to be there turning a camera on in front of them. And that's the privilege of being a documentary cameraman. I mean, I never took it for granted. I say just Formula One was one thing, and then you go off and do something else, and you think, well, I know a little bit more about Formula One than I did now.
You're learning something every time, aren't you, as well? And that's a nice thing. A bit like for myself doing these interviews, I'm learning so many things from so many amazingly interesting people. It broadens your own knowledge.
I mean, I didn't want to sound so I was putting the Americans down, but they do work in a completely different way. I mean, I know that I've taught myself out of jobs because I've been sat in the interview going, we don't need that. We don't need that. I can do that cheaper. And then you just see them looking at you thinking, does this guy know what he's doing? Whereas I know that I can walk into a room and the first thing I'll do is switch the lights out. And if the natural light's really nice, I'll go, well, turn over. We don't need to surround this person in lights. It just phases them. But, they have a way of doing things, and, we have a way of doing things. And then luckily I learned off some really good DOPs at Ealing Studios who were very minimal. And it's fantastic. They go
in the dance world, we call it cutting out the noise.
Repeat that.
We call it cutting out the noise.
Yeah.
So if a sentence can be short, keep it short.
Yeah.
And then whatever you're saying comes across clearly.
Yeah. No, I get it. I absolutely get it.
So another project you worked on was how the universe works. Now, I'm fascinated about how the universe does work, and it still blows my mind to think that we are such a small little planet in such a big place. How did you get into that then, and how did that go?
Oh, I loved it. I did about 3 series of it, and I always came back. Most of it was in America. I always came back scratching my head, knowing less than I did when I went. Like we'd spend 2.5 weeks in America talking about dark matter, and I still don't know what it is, or dark energy. I still don't know what that is. But you interview some of the most amazing people and go to NASA, JPL, all these scientists all over the place, trying to explain the unexplainable. And I loved the vastness of it, about how they couldn't actually describe how big something was or how powerful something was. And you go away and you do a whole episode on supermassive black holes and event horizons and spaghettification. You come back just scratching your head going, my God, what was that about? But it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And people who are so excited about science and some great directors who just threw themselves at it. I mean, it's still out there. I see it come up on Netflix and all this kind. I think, oh, I worked on that. I think people have this fascination with all that stuff, about exoplanets and stuff I'd never heard of, but you would just sort of deep dive into this, and they really didn't dumb it down. It really was complicated, but I loved it. I loved trying to get my head around it.
But do you watch any of your stuff back that you've worked on?
Yeah, sometimes I do. It's funny, some stuff just pops up every now and again, and it's sort of, you see it on Netflix or lots of Amazon or something. So, oh, that's a series I worked on, and you have a little quick look and think, oh, I remember that. I remember where I was. But it's like I've said before. I remember the people more than the program, as it were. I remember the scientist I was interviewing or the astronaut I interviewed. And my memory couldn't recall what episode that was. I just remember that person.
Yeah, I mean, this has been recorded in June 2023, and England have just lost the first game of Ashes cricket, unfortunately. And they interviewed Pat Cummins, who was the star batsman at the end of Australia's innings, and they said to him, "Did you plan to do this? Did you plan to do that?" And he generally said the words, "I can't remember any of it." And he couldn't remember a thing. He was just in the moment doing it, but he couldn't remember anything.
No, I'm getting worse as well. Just sort of, you reminded me of some of the stuff I've worked on. Oh God, yeah, I did do that. It's yeah, it's a real trip down memory lane.
Now, the last one we're going to chat about very briefly on this one is the wonderful world of Len Goodman. So you did a program with Len. How was sadly no longer with us, but how was Len?
I know, very sad he's not with us. A true gentleman. I never followed strictly, but obviously knew who he was. And I hadn't done a Who Do You Think You Are before. And when I was asked by a director I worked with a lot, Michael Wadding, who's a very, very good friend, asked me to do it. And he said it was Len Goodman. And we were just excited because he just thought, God, he's a national treasure, I guess. Yeah. He was brilliant. And you found out his heritage was from Poland. One of his great uncles was a Polish lancer in the cavalry, and his family were weavers in the East End. But he was just one of those genuine people that we'd be walking around the East End, and he would always stop and talk to someone, and he'd always sign autographs. He'd always have a picture taken. He wasn't at all grand, and well, it was hard going anywhere with him because he was always stopping. But what a gentleman! And we filmed at his dance club or his dance academy. That was incredible, absolutely fantastic.
Well, the impact that he's had on the dance world is incredible. He has changed the world of dance forever.
Yeah,
just him personally.
Yeah, I didn't know his history. Obviously, I did a bit of research before I started working with him. But it's only when you look back how long, because he didn't start till later in life, did he?
No.
The TV side. I don't think he started. What was in his 50s even before he started the TV side of it. But he just took to it. I mean, he was a natural on camera. Very funny.
We did a little video in our dance class. So this is just the day after he sadly passed away, and we did a little video, and when we count in 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you start. So I got the class, I filmed the class, and I went, right, we're just going to do this. So we went 5, 6, and then everyone just shouted 7 and then 8, and then we started dancing. And it's one of those popular videos I've put out there in years.
And people will remember him. It's like my parents, funny because they sort of, when I was filming, never knew where I was, what I was doing, but I told them I was working with Len Goodman, and it was then they're telling everyone I'm working with Len Goodman. Doesn't matter that I'm in Haiti or in a war zone, I'm working with Len Goodman. It's fantastic. And I can see why. I mean, he was just such a gentleman, and one of those very memorable films. You just look forward to getting up in the morning and going to work with him.
There are some people that you walk into a room and they bring light to a room. And I always got the impression Len was one of those.
Yeah, he was. And he always had time. And he was just genuinely funny. And he wouldn't make it hard work. I mean, he was fantastic. Very professional as well.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. Well, we're going to have another little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your documentary that you made with Prince at the time, but now King. Charles. So we'll be right back after this.
Made locally in Bath. This is Radio Bath. Radio Bath.
Right, we're back with Paul Lang. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. So we're going to talk about a documentary that you made with, at the time, Prince, but now King Charles. So I believe it was called Inside the Duchy of Cornwall. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I only got involved in a little bit of it, but as the way of these documentaries, they only allow certain people in. So most of it have been shot by the director, who's also a very good cameraman, Charlie Clay. But they had a major interview to do up at Balmoral, and I got the call to fly up and do it.
I'm going to say, how did you get involved with it? It's like you get the call, effectively.
Well, I knew Charlie from before, the director, and we had a good relationship. And he said I was quite relaxed and unflappable, and that's what he wanted on the day. He didn't want, but that's easier said than done. So yeah, Charlie asked if I'd do it, and I'm up for a challenge. So off I went.
So you said you flew in, as in you flew to near the area, or?
Yeah, I think we flew to Aberdeen. We stayed in a hotel nearby, and you just slowly are winding yourself up because you think, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing Prince Charles, and he's not going to do things twice, and you've only got one go at this. Even though it was me walking through, he planted a big forest in outside where he lived. It's him talking about the environment and everything else. But for a period of it, I'd be the only one who'd be with him walking through the forest. So I was slightly nervous about that. I think it's an odd thing to do. But yeah, slowly wound myself up all through the night. And then we got the call to go to do it at about 9 a.m, all dressed up, drizzling, and we've got suits on and stuff, to be wandering around outside with Prince Charles.
So what was the security like? You say you were just with him, just you and him, or?
Yeah, I mean, if there was any security, we didn't see a lot of it. There was a little bit going in. We obviously we all had to be vetted and everything else.
Yeah.
But when we got there, we just met the chap who was our liaison guy. We were told how we were to address him, and we just basically took it from there. It was the first sequence we had to do was him just walking over a river, and then I had to walk through the forest with him. And they said, just try and keep your distance and film him from a distance. But it's odd. I'm a sort of, I like to introduce myself to people, and I just thought, well, I can't just, it'd be like stalking him. So I just went up and introduced myself and said hello. I can't remember what I said. I don't know how you're supposed to address people. I think I said Your Highness. Whether that was right or not, I don't know. And then said Sir after that. But he was absolutely charming. I said, I've just thought I'd introduce you just in case you thought I was stalking you with a camera. But he couldn't have been any nicer. He just sort of relaxed you and thought, oh God, this is going to be all right.
And so did you have that scenario that, like, speak when you're spoken to, or did you kind of just end up just chatting to him like two blokes walking along in a forest?
Yeah, it was, you did feel like, oh, speak when you're spoken to. But he really put you at ease. And because he's a Duke of Cornwall and I'm a Cornishman,
right?
I had Cornish cufflinks on, and I said, "Sir, I think I'm the only Cornishman in the forest," and he laughed. But I think you get him away from all the people, and he was absolute delight. And he spent time with us. He didn't rush. Obviously, he's passionate what he was speaking about. He was speaking about the environment, and it was. It's great hearing when someone's speaking passionately about what they want to do, no matter who it is. But he genuinely cared, and he just spent as much time with us as we wanted.
There's lots of people that kind of discuss whether the royalty is the right thing and whether it shouldn't be there, and are they better people than other people, and all of that. And I suppose my view's always been is that the position they're in, they can influence a lot of people to do things. Did you find that he was able to do quite a lot more than you realized?
Yeah, I don't really understand everything he has the power to do and everything else, but I just felt that he genuinely cared and he genuinely wanted to do things for people. And that's got to be a good thing, whether you're a prince or someone down the road. I just think he genuinely cared. I know a lot of people not the royal family. I'm not a royalist by any extent, but I just think when you meet someone who you think is genuine, then I don't care who they are.
No, a genuine nice person is a genuine nice person.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's nice to hear that the head of the royal family, as he currently is now,
yeah,
is a nice person.
yeah, yeah.
And you've got a first-hand interview on that. So
I did, and it's sort of. I only wish my grandmother had been alive when I uh, interviewed him. She would have loved that. She to think that her grandson was with Prince Charles, she would have absolutely loved that.
yeah, it's quite a strange thing to think about, isn't it? Do you kind of look back and just picture where you were, and again have those smell the roses moments?
Yeah, you do. I remember where we were. I remember how nervous I was. I mean, I must have switched a camera on and off hundreds of thousands of times in my life. I did the sequence with him, and then did I turn the camera? Is it on? Did I have a recording?
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. I don't remember the red light going on. Oh my God. And you just panic. It's totally irrational. But because so much pressure is put on that moment,
Hmm.
you just start doubting yourself. You think, did I get that info?
Oh.
Was it all right? And you just think, oh God. I've had that a few times. You just sort of the lead up to something, and there's so much put on it, and it's very quick, and then you think, did I get that right?
It's always
I don't know, but it was.
It's always one of my biggest fears is that when you're recording something that you haven't pressed record. In
Yeah.
fact, I did have an example of that recently when I was doing some recording and I couldn't go back and redo it.
Yeah.
Did you have any moments recording with King Charles that kind of didn't quite go to plan and you had to redo?
No, thankfully, when we were doing the main interview, I was walking backwards through a forest. I had the director guiding me, but everything went fine. I expected going, all over the place, but everything went well. And I know that if we had messed up, he would have done it again.
Yeah.
The more we did it, the more we got relaxed, and I knew that he was sort of he wanted to do it as much as we did. He wasn't just sort of put on the spot. I think it was his showcase of what he was doing. So I think if we'd said to him, look, we've got to do that all again, I think he would have done it.
And I suppose that's the difference, isn't it? He's not recording something which he's been told or said, you really should do this. It was something he felt passionate about himself. So it wasn't, I assume he doesn't get paid for doing that type of thing, but it's just something he wanted to do.
Yeah. And I know that I don't think that Charlie had given him the questions before. So
Okay.
he was quite he knew what the themes were going to be, but Charlie wasn't there to trip him up anyway. It was about the environment. He was never going to sort of go down any other road. But like you're doing, it just makes it more spontaneous, and he was happy to do that. So
Yeah. No, I think it's much more of as an interview, if you have that conversation, it feels more natural. So it's more fun as well. So if you had to choose the most pressurized scenario, so you were in the Amazon, the slums, Iraq, or interviewing the King of England, which was the most pressurized?
it's got to be doing Prince Charles, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Just yeah, because you use all the other scenarios, you can possibly do things again, but yeah, having one go at that in Balmoral and the pressure that was put on it, it was the big interview for the whole series, and yeah, I did feel that one a little bit.
Well, you managed to do it, which is always a good thing.
I did manage to do it. Yeah, I might have had a lager after the end of it.
Just the one lager.
Yeah.
We're going to have another little break for music. And when we come back, we're going to change tact ever so slightly and talk about what you actually got up to during COVID. So I'll be back after this.
Made locally in Bath. This is Radio Bath.
So we're back with Paul Lang. We're now going to talk about times during COVID. And Paul has written a book all about the fact that he went from being a cameraman to being a delivery driver. Now, for those that aren't aware, I'm a dance teacher, and I actually had a very, very similar experience, and I became a delivery driver too. So, Paul, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how did you feel when business effectively shut down overnight?
Yeah, probably like you really felt like the rug was pulled under your feet, and you think, I cannot sit at home for how long this is going to take, penniless, watching daytime telly. I've got to do something. So Yeah, like you. I took up delivery driving at Tesco, which was incredible. I think it was a big turning point in my life, funnily enough.
In what way?
That it was sort of apocalyptic at the beginning, wasn't it? It was, the streets were empty. It was like a Danny Boyle film.
Hmm.
People locked in, and you're driving around delivering hobnobs and peanuts to people. I think this is just surreal. It is just surreal. I'm driving through sort of this sort of Hollywood set of empty streets, and I'm delivering people shopping, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I felt totally privileged to be doing it. That I was allowed out. I was allowed to do a job, and I'd be the only people would see week on end, especially when it was hot in that first summer. I'd keep my distance. I'd drop the bags up the front, and you just have chats with people, and you knew they didn't want you to go because you're the only contact that they've had with anyone. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And all the things I've done as a documentary cameraman, I found that experience totally life-changing for me. You go to the other side of the world, you see this, you see that. It's all here in this country. You've got also, I'd be delivering 4 crates of champagne to somebody during lockdown, for one person. Then my next delivery would be around the corner to a housing estate, and I'd be delivering crisps to somebody in a bucket. And you think, this is just either ends of the spectrum. Some people going through lockdown with champagne, and some people really hanging on by the skin of their teeth. And I felt humbled by it, totally humbled by it. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
How strange was it for you? Because, as a filmmaker, it's going to be reasonably well paid, I would guess. And then being a delivery driver, it's not that well paid. How did it feel when you kind of got your pay packet and you're like, oh,
Yeah, it's I'm not going to lie, it was a bit of a struggle, but I enjoyed the work so much, and I put a little bit in my book about this. I remember getting a call. I was waiting for a delivery. It was first thing in the morning. My first delivery was 6:30, and I was waiting. And I had a call that time of the morning for someone asking me to do a filming job that had come up, and having to follow COVID rules and everything else. And they said, "Oh, we won't tell them what you're doing now, just in case they ask." And I just felt like saying, "Well, why not? This is the first real work I've done all my life. I mean, I'm apart from the shipyard. It's such a privilege doing documentary work. I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning delivering groceries." And they say, "Well, we won't tell anybody what you're doing now." Why not?
why
This
not?
is proper life. And
Yeah.
I felt so detached from it all at that point. I thought, I don't want to be doing that anyway.
And I love the fact that it's all about perspective. So I was doing the delivery driving to Star Wars, and yeah, I had to be in at 6:30 in the morning to load the van up, ready to go out. I was delivering frozen food to the elderly people. And again, I was the only person they would see that week sometimes. And it was, yeah, you just have that chat with them from a distance, and you'd be the highlight of the day. I then started doing a bit more of the organization, because as somebody that runs a business normally, I found it really weird to have a boss all of a sudden. That I found really strange. I was like, oh, if you could just do it like this, or maybe if you did it like this. And then they kind of got me involved in it a little bit more. And then I was getting up earlier and earlier to go in and help more and more. And then there was one day I just went back to doing the driving, and I thought, oh, I've got a lie-in. I'm now getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I class that as a lie-in. And so it's, again, all about perspective, isn't it?
It is about perspective. Yeah, well, it was first time I'd worked for anybody for a long time, and gone through the selection process and everything. I mean, it was surreal. I stuck it all in my book. But my grandma had said to me that I should write a book about all my travels and whatever I've done with a camera, but I didn't put pen to paper until I started driving for Tesco's, and I just wrote about it. Yeah, I was amazed. All the money goes to hospice in Plymouth, but it all took off, and got published in the Sunday Times and all sorts of stuff.
I was going to say, I was looking, and there's loads of different adverts about it everywhere.
Yeah, it just took me by surprise, really. But there you go, it's still out there, it's still dribbling away. but yeah, still waiting for Kevin Costner to play me in the film version. But
Of
we live in.
course. Yeah, I'm waiting for Brad Pitt to play
Yeah.
in mine as well. So
But I love the delivery driving, and a real mix of people. I was working with taxi drivers, because a lot of the people from the arts were out of work. I was working
yeah,
with a trombone player from Les Miserables, lots of actors, a real mix of people, and it was a real sense of, right, let's do something. Like you, you could have sat home, but you did that, and I think it's it was something I'm very proud of. Not thinking, oh, look at me doing a low paid job. It wasn't that. It was, I'm more proud of the people I was with, that were all sort of trying to get people through it.
did you do that classic question of what's your normal job?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had all that. When's real work coming back was always a question. Think, well, you don't get me wrong, this is real work, and
Yeah,
what it's what turned me around. Really, it's why I didn't really want to go back to filming.
I was going to ask that actually. So, you were asked during when you were doing your delivery driving, here's another project. Have you hung up your camera for good?
Yeah, I think I have. I'll still do bits and pieces. If somebody asks me to do something for charity, or if my partner wants me to do something, I will. But I don't miss it. I miss the people. I miss the people I interview, but I don't miss the whole TV side of it. And it's gone down a different way now. It's not 35 years ago at the BBC anymore. So, and I love what I'm doing now. I love the community side of it, and it's I still get it now. Say, oh, what did you used to do? And I'm working with all sorts of people. I'm working with sort of physics engineer now, and all sorts of people. But it was the same at Tesco's, that all sorts of people and all walks of life, and that's what I liked about it.
And would you go back to delivery driving if you had
to? No. It was, hopefully what I'm doing now will see me out, but no, actually, would I would maybe think about it, but well, it's hard work.
It is really hard work, actually. Certainly that first the April to June time, when it was boiling hot, our vans were not air conditioned. And we were doing 10-12 hour days, because we were really busy, because we were the only things that could supply people food. So we were maxed out and doing loads and loads of stuff. And it was long, hard days. And I have full respect for everybody that does it. I wouldn't want to do it again.
No. I remember coming home from work during the hot time we had there, and I'd been delivering up flats in Notting Hill. Crates of water is all people wanted at the time. Crates of it. And I just remember coming out absolutely exhausted. And I remember saying to Lou, this is the hardest day work I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
I just hold my hand up to all those people who do that day in, day out. Just think they should be respected. Everyone out and clapped, all the key workers and everything, but they should go and clap on everybody Thursday. And you take it for granted, and it's just it's funny, because on when I'm out and about now, I see the odd Tesco van go past, and I recognise the drivers. I always wave at them. They say, why is this policeman waving at me?
I also ended up in the call center a little bit as well.
Oh, did
you?
You?
So I had it all set up at home, and so the days I wasn't delivery driving, I would also do the call center. Some days I'd do a bit of both. So yeah, I got right into my telephone voice.
Did you? I'm glad I didn't live at the call center in Tesco. That would have been too stressful.
Yeah, no, it was quite stressful at times.
Yeah.
You're trying to do a variety of different things, and again, I think the strange thing that we had back in those days is that normally, the company I worked for has amazing organization, and if you do that job, you go out for a month beforehand, and you sit with somebody, and you train, and you learn how to do it all. I went out. They needed people. I was available. I did it, and you just kind of learn on the job. But they trained me very well in the end. But it was really difficult to start with, because you're just kind of making it up as you go along.
You do. You're right. I looking back on it, I did enjoy it, a hell of an experience.
Yes. I think we both look back on it with fond memories, but both happy not to do it again.
Yeah, it was hard work. That's especially at my age.
Indeed. Um, so we're going to come back. We're going to come back. Nobody gets away with a quick fire round. So yeah, we're going to come back after the break with Paul for the quick fire round after this.
Locally made. This is Radio Bath.
Right, it's time for the last link then with Paul, and it's the quick fire round. Everybody's always really nervous about this round. How do you feel about it, Paul?
Yeah, everybody's nervous, so am I. How quick do I have to be with the quick fire round?
You don't have to be that quick. It's still relaxed. They're just quick questions. It's nothing that
Okay.
big. You'll be fine. I promise you that. Right,
Brilliant.
here's the first question. Everybody gets to know the first question, but the rest of them, they don't get to know. So what is your favorite ice cream?
It's got to be just Cornish vanilla.
Cornish vanilla from a Cornish man.
Mhm.
Yeah, very good. Are you tidy or messy?
Tidy.
Tidy. Is that
Yeah,
what your partner will tell you?
Yeah, when I was a cameraman, my boxes had to be lined up at the departure gate. They couldn't be messy.
Do you know what? I have a lighting engineer that works for me as well as a DJ. And whenever he packs up the DJing box at the end of the night, it's like a work of art.
Yeah.
It really is. Every
Yeah.
cable is just beautifully placed in there. When I do it, just like
Yeah.
a jumble.
Can't do it. No, nothing like a messy cable. I'm with him all the way on that one. It's got to be
Yeah.
coiled up properly.
He's very good. Love or hate roller coasters?
Uh, love it. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker.
Very good. When did you last go?
God, I haven't been on a roller coaster for ages, but I do remember seeing one with all the twists and turns going, yeah, I'll have a go at that.
I've just been to Thorpe Park actually, and I have the simple trick of taking a travel sickness pill, and therefore I feel okay. And I went and didn't feel sick once. So
Yeah, I used to be a bit of a thrill seeker when I was younger. As I've got older, it's worn off a bit. I used to bungee jump and all that nonsense.
oh, did you? Okay, where did you
Flying.
bungee jump then?
New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I committed last month when I was interviewing the Children's Hospice that next year, which is my 50th birthday year, that I'm going to do a skydive for their charity.
Good lad.
So and I hate heights. I'm
Oh, there you
ex-RAF,
go.
but yeah. But,
Oh, brilliant.
so yeah, we'll see. Do you hang your toilet roll over the top or behind the back?
Oh, over the top every time.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. But if I see it the other way around, I will turn it around.
Will you? If you go to somebody else's house?
No. I'm not good at somebody's
turn it around.
No, I don't. Why do I do that? I don't know.
I generally have. I've gone to somebody's house round the wrong way, which is round the back for me, and I've turned it round. Yeah. But that's the world I live in. Do you eat your chocolate if you like chocolate? Do you eat your chocolate from the fridge or from the cupboard?
Oh, fridge.
Fridge. Why?
It's got to be a bit crunchy and cold and not melting away.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Do you make your bed in the morning?
If I'm the last up, then yes. If I'm an early shift, no, because I leave at 4:30 in the morning.
Fair enough.
No, I'm good around the house, shall we say?
Okay. And are there follow-up question to that? Are there any cushions on your bed outside of the pillows?
No, controversially, there are 2 cushions behind the pillows.
Okay.
Which get taken off and put on the floor before we go to bed.
Well, that's the same principle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm still yet to understand why.
Yeah,
It looks pretty. They get put there. You leave the room. You come back in the room. You take them off.
I know.
Just a trip hazard on the floor. What is your favorite breakfast?
See, it could be full English or it could be the smoothie I had this morning.
Oh, tell me about your smoothie this morning then.
Oat milk, 2 raw eggs, peanut butter, dates, banana, and blueberries.
Sounds amazing. I might get the recipe off you.
Yeah, it's a bucket of sludge, but it's fantastic.
That sounds really nice, really nice. Now, there's no pressure on you for this next one, but Mary, you know, she did this, and she did it very well, and she's the only person in all of the interviews I've done to have done this next part. Okay, so the first part of this question is, if you had to, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh my God. Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues.
Okay, and therefore you now know what the follow-up question will be to that. Are you going to give us a rendition now?
You
don't have to.
You put me on the spot. I'm a terrible singer.
That's okay. You don't have to. But Mary, all of a sudden, Mary burst out into song. I'm like, oh, somebody's done it.
I'm not gonna subject your viewers to my dulcet Cornish tones trying to do Johnny Cash.
Right, now this next one would be really difficult for you, okay? Do you have a favorite TV program or film? It doesn't have to be one you've worked on.
Yes. My favorite film is Sean Connery, Michael Caine, The Man Who Would Be King.
Okay, why?
I just love it. I just love the adventure. I just love where it's set. It reminds me of my brother. We both love the film. It's just something about it. It's just an old ripping yarn, and I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. I could also list another 20 films I absolutely love, but The Man Who Would Be King, if it's on the telly and I'll watch 5 minutes, I'll watch the whole thing.
Can I be honest? I've never seen or heard of it, but I'm going to watch it post this interview.
John Huston directed it. It's Michael Caine's wife is in it, Shakira. It's stunning. It's a Rudyard Kipling story.
Right. I will absolutely go and watch that. And your last question then, Paul, is if you came back in your next life as an animal, which one would you be and why?
I'd like to come back as a dog.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. Have you read Fluke?
I haven't, no.
It's a man who comes back as a dog. I've read it again recently, and my dog's got a pretty good life. I think, yeah, that's pretty cool. Quite like to be Millie, I think.
You'd like to be Millie. Well,
yeah,
Millie,
she's got very little to worry about.
And she's been under the desk all of this interview, and she's not made a sound.
No, she is here. She's a bit full on because she just had a haircut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have, and I hope I haven't blathered or the sound of people turning off in their droves. It's been really interesting. You've been great. Absolutely.
You're very kind. Genuinely, at Radio Bath, we love chatting to people like yourself, and we've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on, and we hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, much appreciated, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.